All right, you've grabbed the treasure, but in doing so, you woke the dragon. He spots you and starts to inhale deeply. What do?
Welcome to episode 278 of the Tabletop Bellhop Gaming Podcast, Improv Night, where we're going to be sharing our favorite tabletop games that involve improvisation as part of gameplay. For reviews, we've got one improv game to talk about with Oh Captain, My Captain from Simon Schuster, and something pretty much unrelated to the rest of this, and that is Emerald Skulls from Thunderworks Games.
I duck, I roll, and then I tell you all that between those two reviews, we'll be talking about the games we've been playing, including our first plays of Courtisans from Pandasaurus, a Return to Ascension, digitally, trying out the second edition of Santorini for the first time, and new plays of Dawn, and Curses and Covens, including some extreme plays, and a commonly missed rule that you want to watch out for.
Before we get to any of that, we better let people know who we are. I'm Sean, your host, and with me is the editor and webmaster, Deanna.
Hey there to all the Bellhop boarders.
And Mo, the tabletop bellhop himself.
I am Mo Tuzano, the Tabletop Bellhop, your cardboard concierge, working with you to make your game nights better.
We like to record Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern live at twitch.tv/tabletopbellhop, and we love it when people join us in our lobby, the chat room.
Okay, before we move on, a little bit of housekeeping. First, disclosure. Wherever you're consuming this, any links you see are most likely affiliate links, which cost you nothing extra to use, but do help support the show. You can find detailed show notes for this episode over at tabletopbellhop.com/episode 278. That's 278. And when I say detailed, I mean detailed. We list every game we talk about with links to where you can find a copy and more info on it. Finally, I want to acknowledge that this episode exists because of the support of our awesome Patreon patrons.
We've got a couple of important announcements we need to get out of the way.
All right, so the first one is in regards to the Summoning. That's the big gaming convention happening here in Windsor that we've been talking up for the last 2 or 3 episodes. Unfortunately, it's been moved. It was originally scheduled for July 26th, later this month, but had to be moved to August 23rd. So I really hope our encouragement to come in from out of town doesn't mean anyone booked any hotels or anything, but hopefully you have enough time to cancel. On a positive note, this delay does give us some time to prepare and potentially to reach out to publishers before the big day. So I'm hoping what this just means is a bigger and better board gaming area for us. We've already reached out and we'll be doing a Boop tournament. So that'll be pretty cool with some cool prizes.
So next up, we're announcing some time off. The kids finished school this week. Prime Day, which is 4 days long this year, is coming up. Sean's dad's heading back to the States, and there's just a bunch of real-life stuff that we've been putting off that needs to get done.
Due to all of that and more, we have made the hard decision to take all of July off from podcasting. While we still may get some written and video content out, we will not be going live on Twitch, and you won't see any new episodes drop in your podcatchers on Tuesdays.
So the current plan, which I'm hoping we'll be able to stick to, is to be back live on August the 6th. That's a Wednesday. And we're going to come back with a special belated Bellhop Birthday episode where we're going to celebrate 7 years of the Tabletop Bellhop, doing what we like to do on our birthday, talking about our best moments and the best games we played in the last year.
And if you've been a fan for a while, you're going to be able to guess this next part. It means that we're probably going to have some cool prizes for our birthday, maybe a new giveaway to celebrate the anniversary. But you're going to have to wait and tune in on August 6th to find out.
The Tabletop Bellhop is here to answer your gaming and game night questions.
So tonight we're talking improv games based on some questions I've gotten at our local public play events from a variety of different gamers. This actually came from 4 or 5 different people that basically all boiled down to people playing a game, enjoying it, and then saying, do you have any other games like this? This happens a lot with some of the games we bring out. Most notably, the ones that seems to derive the most interest in this type of game is Psychobabble, Smug Owls, and most recently I broke out But Wait, There's More.
All of these are games where the active player is put on the spot and forced to give some kind of answer or take some kind of action without any prep time and often using very limited information. Also known as the type of games that give me nightmares.
Note, we aren't talking about role-playing here, though some games we mentioned do have some RPG elements. We're specifically talking about the games that require some improvisation. If you're also interested in games with strong role-playing elements, we've got you covered with episode 264, Get in Character.
Now, I have to admit, there was a part of me that when we chose this topic, I was really tempted to kind of leave the show notes blank and see how we do completely improving. But then I worried anytime we're totally unscripted, we end up rambling a bit long and end up with a 4-hour episode. Or more importantly, I was worried we'd forget like an awesome game recommendation. And then I can totally see us being in the after show being like, oh, shoot, what about this game? Or, oh, we forgot that. And coming up with like 50 games we forgot to mention during the episode. So I did decide to make a more formal list tonight than I had originally planned on.
Well, as usual tonight, this list is in no particular order, though I am going to start off with the ones Mo already mentioned in the intro, starting with Psychobabble, a hidden traitor game where even the traitor doesn't know they are a traitor.
So we have Outset Media guy Paul to thank for this because he insisted we take a copy home from the Origins booth a couple years back. It was certainly not a game that was on our radar, but it has become very popular. It is a Mythos themed game about inmates in an asylum who have all had a shared dream, except for one player who is actually insane. And it's up to the psychoanalyst to try and figure out what the shared dream was, and if they can't, the inmates win. Now, if they can suss out who's insane, and if they can't, the insane player wins. The trick is that no one, including the player who is insane, knows who is who.
Yeah, this game goes over really well with, honestly, like absolutely everyone we've taught it, except for one person. There has been one gamer that I taught once at one of our public play events that just didn't get it and didn't like the fact that you could say anything during your dream, that there were no restrictions, no limits. And what broke the game for them is the person next to him said what she said, which, okay, maybe isn't quite in spirit of the game, but honestly, it worked. It actually made it interesting because then everyone went around the table and said, oh no, what they said. And it ended up feeling more like a game of the chameleon than it did a game of Psychobabble, but it worked. Once you get to the question asking, though, everything else came out, right? Like, so describing your dream, why not? I think it was a perfectly valid play, but that did break the game for someone. But 1 out of 50 different people I probably taught this game, if not more. This is a game's just a hit. And again, thanks, Paul, for like convincing us to try and take this game home. He wasn't going to give us Zensu unless we took this too.
One of the few times this game does actually break, or more, and it still doesn't even really break, is if someone picks their card. So if you look at the map and you say, oh, this is the card I'm supposed to be on, and you pick it and you look out on the table and you pick the card and you start describing, only to realize later that you have actually picked the wrong card and you are describing something completely different than anyone should be describing, whether you should be or not. That causes problems in the game. Not that I've ever done that. Nope. No, sir.
I got to admit, when that does happen, it's usually the whole table ends up laughing anyway, because like, oh, you were actually insane too.
Yes. All right. Well, next up, we have Smug Owls from Runaway Parade, a game where players are trying to come up with the answers to riddles randomly generated by decks of cards.
So I just wrapped up our written review of Smug Owls last week. So go check that out for more information. This has been a big hit with our family, our friends, and our local gaming events. I love how quick it is to set up. It's a matter of pulling 8 cards from one deck, shuffling another deck, splitting it 2, and then flipping up some cards. My favorite part about this game, though, is just hearing everyone's different answers to the riddles. And I'm always shocked by how clever people can be, especially the really way out there answers that I never would have thought of on my own. I love just watching this game. I love teaching it to people and just sitting back and smiling and listening to everyone's riddles.
Yeah, I like that part. Like, I want to say I love this game and I hate this game because I think it is so terribly clever. And I love seeing like how the riddles are automatically generated by the decks of cards and what it comes up with. And it's just, the game is just so flippin' clever. But I hate playing it and being put on the spot and having to come up with answers and always having to be the smug owl is not as fun as you might think when it's every round. Because I just don't think quick. I do not improv and I do not think quickly on my feet. And it bogs down. But listening to other people play it or playing some kind of time-lapse version works for me just grand.
Yeah, I think the place that this game falls down for people like Deanna is that speed element. So the way the game is played, everyone has to guess, come up with an answer, and the last person to come up with an answer is the judge and doesn't even get to give their answer. And if you're the judge over and over and over again, because you're just, you're not as quick as other people, or you haven't figured out a way to do it faster, it can sort of weigh down on you a little bit. And that is the one way that the game falls down a little bit.
The first time I saw this game, it was at Origins, and they had a version of the riddle out, and people were writing in answers. And I like that. Give me half a day to think about it and come back and put an answer on a piece of paper. We're cool.
Yeah, in the review, I did recommend a way to play not real time, where just every player gets to be the small owl once, and then everyone gets as much time as they want to come up with their answers. But don't expect it to be the lightning quick game it is when you're playing by the proper rules.
All right, well, the final game Mo mentioned is But Wait, There's More, which is really a bit of an honorable mention because this pitching game has been out of print for far too long.
Yeah, sorry, Jay and Sen. I pitch it to people. I talk to publishers who publish games, and I'm like, no, what you need to pick up is this game. I is so sad that this game has been out of print for as long as it is. I still think it is the best pitching game on the market. Well, not on the market, ever published, I guess. It's an awesome improv game where everyone's given the same random product. So we're all going to do, say, a leash. And then we're going to get a handful of feature cards, and you're going to try to sell the product using one of the features in your hand. Then partway through your pitch, a random feature is added. You say, but wait, there's more, and then have to adapt your pitch to include the new thing. This game is fantastic. Everyone I've taught it to has loved it. There are also a few expansions out there, but that's the best part, where someone halfway through your pitch goes, but what about it? Is it safe for kids or whatever? I don't remember any of the cards offhand. And then there's various themed product packs and featured packs. I adore this game. I brought it out to Walkerville I don't think it was our last one. It was the one before. Taught it to a group for the first time, and they absolutely adored it. And then they're like, where can we get this? And I'm like, sorry, my copy's not for sale.
So to me, this is the party game night game. It has been broken out at so many birthday parties and New Year's Eve gaming nights at our house. And I have managed to dodge playing it every single time. I have never played this game. I have no interest in playing this game, but I love listening to other people play this game. And of all the games on this list, this is the one that I have probably cracked up the most while listening to people come up with stuff. It is always hilarious.
Well, for something similar, but not quite the same as But Wait, There's More, you can check out Snake Oil from the Out of the Box Publishing. In this pitching game, one player draws a random customer card, and the other players then quickly combine two cards in their hand to come up with a wacky product name, and then pitch the product to the customer, who decides what product to buy.
So this one's neat, but I don't know, I just find it more fun and easier to come up with products with features than trying to figure out how to combine silly names like the rumor mirror and burp balloon. I don't know. Though I got to say, looking at these two games one after another and going on Board Game Geek and stuff, I'm like, I kind of want to combine the two and have part of But Wait, There's More being to come up with the name for your product using the cards from Snake Oil.
Just shuffle the two decks together and see what happens.
Yeah, I don't know. That might work.
All right. Well, next up we have Adventure Party, the role-playing party game from Smirk and Dagger. Pick your character and form a party. Then draw 3 cards to determine the adventure you go on. The card sets up the premise of each round, but then it's up to the players to drive the story.
So here, one member of the group sets up a situation for the next player to respond to. They tell everyone what the character's planning on doing. They roll a d20 behind a screen, then tell the group what actually happened based on their roll. Then everyone bets on what number they rolled. Really simple concept that is just hilarious. Check out a review for more details. There's tons of different cards, tons of different adventures, and no, they're not just combat. The start of this episode, I had Sean kind of use the first picture about a dragon about to breathe fire on the group. That's from this game. That's the recommended starting situation. But we played games where you had to be entertainers to keep a village occupied, and we've had to defend a castle from sieging giants hurling giant rocks at the castle. The amount of different variety of situations in this game are fantastic. and it is 100% player driven after the read the initial card. From then on, it's all improv. This is really a true improv role-playing experience that also has a party game mechanic in it that's quite fun. I love the premise of this game. I've had it go well with both gamers I've gamed with for 40 years, as well as totally newbies who all they know about D&D is it's this thing everyone's talking about online now.
As someone who has played D&D and played RPGs for decades, I find this game I can deal with. I'm more comfortable playing. Like, I will play this game. I'm more comfortable playing this. It is an acceptable improv experience. I'm still not going to seek it out. But our kids love it so much. Like Eve has said, this is one of her favorite games, and they request to play it all the time.
I'm on the fence about this one. This one, it was fun. I think it's one of those games where I would rather play it with a group of role players I know than a bunch of strangers or, some of my group of role players and then a couple of just other gamers who aren't role players necessarily. There's sort of a comfort level as to how wacky and RPG you want to go with, some non-art role players around. And so it didn't really, hit it out of the park for me, but it was definitely a fun game. All right. Well, we're going to stick with the RPG theme now and move on to For the Queen, an improv story game where the premise is that you love the queen and you have to take a dangerous journey with her and the other players, and the rest is determined through play. This was originally self-published by Alex Robbers and has since been picked up and re-released in a shiny new edition by Darrington Press.
So this was a game even I was uncomfortable with when I first sat down to play it, and that was years ago at Queen City Conquest, with some people I knew from online but hadn't met in person except that weekend. But I grew to love this game after that first play. Actually, I think we played 5 times at Queen City Conquest. I was kind of smitten with it. This is a game where you start with nothing but end up building a world, building characters that have fairly deep relationships, discovering more information about the queen, all through just answering leading questions. That's the entire game. Now, there is a unique kind of, well, I don't know if it's unique, but there's a twist at the end of the game that I don't want to spoil because your first experience of For the Queen is going to be special when you don't know what's coming. I find this game to be a fantastic introduction to improv style or improv heavy games, like pure improv role playing. And it's also great practice that are for people who are new to the genre. Like, to me, this is like an icebreaker style of game. Now, the one warning I have about For the Queen is that the premise of you loving the queen and quite a few of the cards being about interpersonal relationships often lead to romance and sometimes adult topics. So this is something you're going to want to discuss before you start playing and may make you not want to play this with younger kids.
I feel like this is very much pass the stick role playing, and I've had some fun playing it with people that I already know and would be comfortable role playing with. But if I had to sit down and play this game with a group of strangers, I would be completely tongue-tied.
Yeah, this is one where you definitely want to have some sort of session zero, particularly with a group of strangers or less familiar players. You've all been gaming together for years and you know what sort of things where people's minds go and where you're going to go. You may be able to skip that. I still recommend you don't. You do have some sort of session zero, regardless of the experience. But amongst a group of strangers or less familiar players, I definitely encourage a strong conversation in advance of a game like this. Now, next up, we've got a game descended from For the Queen. There are a number of games that are inspired by For the Queen, including Fall of Magic, The Quiet Year, and the one we've chosen to highlight, O Captain, My Captain, from James D'Amato, published by Simon & Schuster.
Yeah, the entire series of games that came from For the Queen, everyone just calls Descended from the Queen. So that's a way to know if you're going to have a game that is based on a setting premise and then answering question cards, leading questions throughout the game. Now, the premise in O Captain, My Captain is that you are a crew who had a disaster happen, and the captain has a plan to get you back on track. This plan involves a dangerous journey to get a prize, and you trust the captain to pull you through. Now, the cool part here is, when I say, "Oh, Captain, My Captain," you're probably thinking pirates, especially if you've seen the box and the artwork on it. But there are plenty of captain-crew relationships to choose from. all over the place from supers to sports teams, sci-fi, and more. Now, unlike For the Queen, there are multiple endings, and the group will work together at the end to determine what the prize is, which is some unique changes. The other thing I like is that the romance, while possible, is not part of the main theme of the game. Again, the concept at the beginning is that you trust the captain, not that you love them. Stay tuned if you want to learn more about this improv heavy game, because we will be reviewing it later in the show.
I think For the Queen is very clever. Like the mechanics, the framing of it, it's very clever. I like those aspects of the game, and I think it's really cool that there've been so many offshoots of it. And I do like that when we play Oh Captain, My Captain, it doesn't automatically go to romance. So that is the one thing that I felt that it had over it, and I felt more comfortable if we were going to, say, play it with our kids.
Yeah, the flexibility of Oh Captain, My Captain, by not starting with that specification of love in being involved, allows it to go in a lot more directions, I think. The one gotcha is some people may not be happy about the ending of this game, but you can read more. You hear more about that later in our review, I'm sure. All right, well, moving back towards the tabletop side of improv games, we have Trap Words from CGE. This game has players trying to get their teammates to guess a clue word while having to avoid using any of the opposing team's trapped words.
So I like to call this one Taboo for Gamers with a fantasy RPG theme. As you go deeper in the dungeon, your opponents get to use more trap words, and there's a boss monster fight at the end. And there's even a catch-up mechanic where if one team's far enough ahead, they get hit by traps and have things like you have to give all of your clues in a single breath. That was one that came up the last time we played this game. Now, this is one that requires quick thinking on both teams' part for coming up with the trap words, trying to think of mix of even the easiest clues or doing the I know what you know. So, of course, you know, I'm not going to write down the easiest. I'm going to go for the hard ones, right? And then the real improv part to me in this game is when it's you giving your clues to the rest of your team, and you can use any words you want, any sounds, whatever you want to do, but you have to be sure not to use those trapped words your opponent wrote down, which you don't know, of course, which is what makes this a great party game. This is a fantastic game if you dig this style of word games. Like I said, if you played Taboo, this is, to me, a much more enjoyable experience.
Yeah, when we were collecting the games earlier this afternoon, and you said, I saw trap words in the pile, and I went, wait a second, that doesn't fit the theme. And you talked it out with me, and I do see it, but I got to say, it is not the first thing that came to mind for me. I guess there is some improv there to have to be, like you said, coming up with that description that's being the clue giver and coming up with the clues that are hopefully not going to use those words that are going to get you trapped. So I'll give it to you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's a couple of clues on here that or games on here that I wouldn't have necessarily thought of as improv. But when you think about it, you are absolutely, coming up with stuff on the spot. So another team-based game from CGE that puts you on the spot is Codenames. All varieties. Here, players have to come up with one-word clues that get their teammates to pick out specific word cards while avoiding others. The best clues will lead players to be able to figure out more than one word per turn.
Yeah, so this one's a little bit of a stretch, but it has that one part right at the beginning where you're talking to your team and you have to come up with something clever on the spot that links words together. So to me, this is a really smart word game that actually features a lot more deduction elements. And the key to that, and whatever I think Codenames really starts to shine, is once people played a couple times where you start remembering past clues to help you determine new things. Like earlier they said glue 3 and we only found 2, so there's still something out there that needs glue. And now you've said binding, oh wait, it could be this, maybe it's books, right? That's the part I really like in Codenames. Now, of course, fans of the show know we prefer the Codenames Duet version of the game, which, yes, it's called Duet, but it's not just 2 players. It just makes it a cooperative experience for 2 teams.
Again, when you said Codenames, I wanted to argue this is not improv, and then I realized I don't like playing it in public with strangers. It must be improv.
Totally fair.
Yep.
All right, well, One rather unique improv game is Dixit from Libelud, where the active player comes up with a clue that can be pretty much anything. A word, a song, a sentence, a sound effect, all with the goal of having the players guess the funky art card which they played, while other players will be playing cards from their hand that they think matches the clue as well.
So this game broke my brain the first time I played it. It was my friend Jamie who introduced me to the game. And it was the fact you could give anything as a clue, because the first round I played of the game, he went, "Ba-da-ba-da," or something like that. And then we're like, what the heck is this? I have to now pick a card based on blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yep, that's exactly what you have to do. And I'm like, all right, this seems dumb. I'm sorry. But then I played it and I learned just how clever it is. And one of the things that makes Dixit work to me is the fact that you don't want to be too obvious, because if everyone guesses your card, you get no points and everyone else goes up too, which is a lot in Dixit. So the key to playing Dixit well is being subtle and trying to use clues that apply to multiple cards.
If I gave you code names, I have to give you this one, but I don't know. This just doesn't feel like an improv game to me. There's a couple on this list that I was like, I would have not have included them. So, but I'm not an improv player either, so I'm not the target market.
So I guess the important question is, do you like Dixit and playing it with strangers?
No. So again, maybe.
All right. Well, next up we have Mr. Lovenstein Presents No Context from Skybound Entertainment, a party game about making connections without a lot of information.
So sticking to these party games that Deanna may not consider improv games, this is an improv game that I wanted to include because you don't have to say anything. That it's not about coming up with clues or cues. It's you get a hand of cards. So this has comic panels. Anyone who doesn't know Mr. Lovenstein, it's a famous web comic. Go look it up. They're usually pretty funny. You basically set up a bunch of panels at the top of the board, and everyone is assigned a panel. And there are more panels than players. No one else knows what your panel is, but then you're going to take 3 panels and you're going to make your own 3-panel comic that you're using to lead people to guess which of the actual panels at the top are yours. And it's all a matter of playing cards face up, saying, yes, this comic is about my panel, or no, this comic is not about my panel. That's pretty much it. Now, the fun in this game to me, check out a review. I kind of go into this in detail, especially with my daughter's reaction, is the part at the end of the round where everyone's trying to justify the cards they picked and why they went. I think this is a great one for players who don't want to have to come up with their own clues or answers or do any role playing. Instead, you're just picking cards.
Again, this is just not a style of game I enjoy. We have had some fun playing this one with the kids, and I do agree that the part about the game that's good is when you have to do that justification at the end and explain it. Is it improv? I don't know.
This is the one I would probably give you the hardest time with on this list. I think Concept and Dixit, those work. I can see the improv in them. This one, you got to make up something at the end, but you don't really have to make up something at the end. It's just kind of something that's where the game is led with in our groups, but how much of that actually has to happen, I don't know.
Is the improv part the part where you have to make up something with those 3 panels?
Picking your panels.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's just.
I just don't see how that's different than picking clues and having to say them out loud. Instead, you're using cards to get the information across. Anyway, you don't have to agree.
Well, heading back into some games with RPG elements, we have Dubious from Arcane Wonders. This is a hidden role game where you are assigned a profession and a secret. You answer questions on cards in character, and everyone has to try and guess who you are and what your secret is.
All right, no one better debate me about putting this one on the list, because this is pretty much pure improv. This is another game that does the whole you have to be obvious but not too obvious thing, and I love it for that. That is the key to this. You get no points if everyone guesses your cards, but you get maximum points if all but one person does. You just want that little bit of subtlety. The game also comes with 3 settings: Victorian, London, Fantasy, and Modern, which is awesome. There are more coming in future expansions. And one of the things I really enjoy about this is actual logic deduction is part of the game as well. You can do some elimination, like when you're doing logic squares. I don't know what you call logic squares, but whatever that, you can do some elimination based on the answers people give and the cards you've already seen. So this is to me, a great mashup of social deduction, improv, role playing, and logic deduction.
Yeah, I'm not arguing this one. This is literally the first game that popped into my head when you told me what tonight's topic was going to be. This is 100% improv, most certainly improv, and I don't even hate it. Again, I think it's the we usually go Victorian or fantasy. I don't like the modern as much. You get some RPG trappings around it, and apparently I can handle improv in small doses.
Yeah, no, this one's great. Absolutely improv. The only problem I have with it is I think the way they designed their scorecard answer sheets is bizarre and doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And they couldn't explain it to me either. So we asked them when we were at the Arcane Wonders booth last year at Origins, and they didn't really have an answer either.
Now, Deanna, you mentioned earlier today that our daughter Gwen is currently working on her own sheets for her own version of the game to play on her birthday.
Yeah, she's coming up with special activities for her birthday party with her friends, and among those is she's making custom dubious sheets for them to play a custom game that day. I don't know. I know that this game has been hugely popular with her and her friends, and with her board game club at the high school. The dubious she brings every week, like it is super popular. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, this seems to be the hit for the local art theater school, which kind of makes sense.
Well, next up is the alignment guessing game, Kiss the Goblin from Skybound. Here, you are assigned a random D&D style alignment. You answer a question as a character with that alignment, and the other players try to guess what alignment you got.
So this one's odd to me because it doesn't follow the usual scoring system for games like this, because the best you can do in this game is have only one other person guess right. If no one guesses, no one gets any points. But you need someone to guess to get one right. But you don't want multiple people getting it because everyone who guessed right also gets a point. So the best way to play this is to be on the same wavelength as one player and only one player. Now, I will point out, this is a party game. Throw out the scoring if that bothers you. This game is just as fun as it sounds. It's dead simple. One thing I do like about it, despite being called Kiss the Goblin and using Dungeons and Dragons alignments, is that not all the questions are fantasy based. There are modern things mixed in as well. Things like you are late. Your cabbie drive you. Sorry. You're a cabbie. The patron drives away walks away without paying. What do you do? Like, that's one of the questions that you can answer. So I do like the fact that there are a mix of things in there.
This game is a hoot. You can play it with people that are unfamiliar with what RPG alignments are. It's possible, but I think it's just so much more fun and a much more smooth experience if you sit down at a table where everyone basically has an idea of what character alignments are. If you get over that hump, this game is just pure fun. And yeah, throw out the scoring. Throw out the scoring in every party game.
Well, our next suggestion, which was already mentioned in the chat room as well, is Concept. This is another game where one player is trying to get the other players to guess a clue word, phrase, person, or title, but the only way they can communicate is through a board filled with icons and plastic components.
Yeah, this was one we actually did talk about debating on the list. For some reason, Mr. Levenstein didn't even, that just seemed to fit to me more so than this. But I wanted to include it because it's another game that requires quick thinking and coming up with clues with limited resources. And I wanted to include it as another game that doesn't require talking, right? You're not having to say answers and come up with answers verbally, which honestly can be a hang up for a lot of people in improv games. By removing that element, it makes the game more accessible. Now, Concept is just a unique concept. My only problem with the game is it just feels old and dated now every time we break it out. There's lots of references to pop culture things that aren't really pop culture anymore. And playing this with my kids is hard because they don't recognize the names of the movies or TV shows or most of the famous people. Concept needs an update, folks. Like, put out a 2025 clue pack, please.
Yeah, you're not wrong about the update needed, but I love this game. This is probably my favorite party game. It is a party game I will actually ask to play. I actually will be the one to suggest breaking this one out. I don't know how much improv I feel is involved here. Maybe not very much, and maybe that's why I like it.
Yeah, I think possibly we might have wanted to or been able to debate the definition of improv prior to starting this one. The fact that you can play this one completely online with no communication whatsoever other than the screen in front of you suggests to me it is not what I would consider improv. But
yeah, but I feel like that online version, that online version takes all the fun out of it, though.
Yeah, it's the getting put on the spot part of improv. Like, I don't know how to do it. It's games with improv elements, not improv games. That would be a slightly different list.
Fair enough. All right, well, now we come to the Chameleon, another hidden role game. Each round in this game, there's a secret word based on a topic. Everyone but one player knows this word, and everyone knows the topic. The goal is for the group to catch the chameleon, who wins if they get through the round unnoticed.
Yeah, so this one has players put on the spot by having to come up with one-word clues, and you don't want to be too obvious because it makes the chameleon's job easier. The most improv part of this game is being the chameleon, who has to then pay attention to what everyone else is saying so that they can feel like they're part of the group and pretend they know what the actual word is, or even better, figure out what that word is and just play it up. And now this game does also include a debate phase where players as a group decide who the chameleon is, and players try to defend their word choices. Now, the fun part here is that even if the group picks the right chameleon, you figure it out, you suss it out. Sean's faking it. He didn't know what the word was. Well, if Sean does know what the word is, he wins. The chameleon wins if they are able to guess the word. So this one's actually really clever and subtle. I have found, though, that it tends to fail on the first and sometimes second play as people have to learn the idiosyncrasies on how the game actually works and just how subtle they should be. But once the group gets it, it's a ton of fun. Like, this is a game that if I'm sitting down and someone asks me to teach, I'm like, do you all know this game? They're like, yeah, we know it. I'm happy to join in. If two people are like, oh, I've never played this before, I'm a little less reluctant to join in myself.
It's a bluffing game. That's at its heart. It's a bluffing game. And I don't know.
For one player.
Yeah, for one player. For whoever is a chameleon, it's a bluffing game. And I'm like, is bluffing your ass off improv? Yeah, I guess.
All right, well, we have had a number of suggestions come up in the lobby, starting off with Big Idea.
This is an old one. That's a pitch game that I would love to try. I don't think it's still available. It was a cheap ass game, which they just don't make cheap ass games anymore. That came in a little white envelope with cards you might have had to cut yourself, from what I remember. It's another pitching game where you've had a big idea and you have to pitch the idea. I don't know much more than that. Does seem like a great fit for this list and probably something we'd love with how much we like. But wait, there's more.
Next up, we had Fun Employed.
Not one I played. I know it's a big box game, something you can find at, Target, Walmart. It's from like Mattel or someone like that. So I think this is one where you're trying to do job interviews, if I remember correctly.
Next up, we had News at 11.
I got to say, the concept of a news-based improv sounds pretty cool. Not one I played.
And it's news at symbol at 11 is that. And there are also expansions for it. You can get the sports ball expansion for News at 11. And Ryan did mention concept, which we got to in our list. Next up, we've got Charlie Brown Windsor saying Shadows of Amun.
Not one I know. Is that even a pitch?
No, I think he was talking about something else there on the board game side.
Okay.
All
right.
Fabled Fruit, Merchants of Araby, and the final chapter.
I don't think those are improv games.
I think those are just games he's been playing lately.
Yeah,
I don't think he's talking about improv.
All right,
games.
How about Picross? Ryan mentioned
Yes,
Picross.
Ryan mentioned Picross.
No, I think that's when I was trying to figure out the whatever you call the logic puzzle grid thing.
Yeah. So just
like
back this up and cut it when we mention News at 11, Sean.
We're done after News at 11.
All right, well, that's it for our improv heavy game recommendations tonight. Hopefully, we've given you a shopping list of games to go check out, and apologies for mentioning a few that might be hard to find.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is spend a little bit more work working on the show notes this week and try to find copies of every single one of these games. Now, I'm not going to be able to guarantee they'll be at prices anyone actually wants to pay, but I'll at least try to find a source for all of them. I have been able to find, but wait, there's more. Last few times we've talked about it, so I'll double check and see if I can find a copy for you now. Again, that'll be in our show notes at tabletopbellhop.com/episode 277.
Welcome to the Bellhop's Tabletop, where we talk about the games that we've been playing lately.
All right, up first was all three of us checking out Courtisans at Chapter 2, one of our favorite local breweries. This one's from Pandasaurus Games, and I got to say the initial teach was rough, but all I had going in was a quick overview from Gamma Expo and Origins last year. The big thing that I didn't take time was to actually look at the cards, iconography, and card text. I was like, I got to see the cards before. I'll just read the book and teach people how to play. Which I got to say, the biggest problem is the card text. Ended up really messing with that first game.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know if there are translation issues. I don't know what language it might have come out in first or what, but they talk about a butterfly, but there is no graphics of a butterfly. There are graphics of a moth. All the pictures that they refer to are actually it looks like Thai was actually the first edition that came out. So there may actually be some translation issues there. But all the pictures are of a moth very clearly.
They also talk about a nightingale in the text of the bonus point cards. They say, "Oh, this happens if you have this many nightingales or whatever." There is a bird on that looks like an owl, maybe on one of the character cards. Does not by a long stretch a nightingale. So
yeah, I know your daughter was saying, "Oh, it doesn't have the right face for an owl," and I'm like, "Well, it's closer to an owl than it is a nightingale. That's for sure."
Yeah.
I can't say for sure what bird it is, but nightingale would not be my choice.
Now, I think the game was originally in French. Both designers are from France specifically. So I don't know. I think it released worldwide a number of different places, but I think the original was France.
Like you said, once we figured that out, going forward, you'll know to point it out to people as we're playing. This icon means moth.
Okay, so just to be clear, a moth in French is papillon de nuit.
So butterfly of
the night.
Right.
So it's probably a French game then. That makes a lot of sense.
I'm pretty sure it's French. Also the spelling of Courtisans.
Yeah. So no, this is a great game, but the iconography definitely could catch you up if you aren't, or at least confuse you for a couple of minutes until you take a look at everything and go through the cards.
Exactly.
And go, oh, this makes sense now. They're just using a weird word.
Yeah, by the first play we had it down. It's not like it and like I said, like Deanna mentioned, now that I know, when I show new people this game, I tell people to look at the art and the color and the icon more so than the text. So I got to say, this is once you get past that, it's a very simple to learn and elegant game. There's a table, which is one of the few board games with a cloth board, which is kind of nice. There's a queen sitting in the middle, and there's representatives from 5 factions seated to her sides. Each round you draw, it might be 6 factions actually, because I think there's 3 on each side. Sorry, it might be 6 factions, but it doesn't matter. Each round you're going to draw 3 cards from the deck and you have to place them. 1, you're going to place at the table, either above the table or below it. Where you place it affects if that family is going to be in favor or fallen from grace at the end of the game. Another card has to be placed in your own tableau, it becomes yours, and the last has to be placed in one of your opponent's tableaus. At the end of the game, you figure out what status each family has by comparing the number of cards above and below the table. If it's more above, the family's in favor, and everyone scores 1 point for every card they have in their tableau for that family. If there are more below the table, then the family's fallen from grace. Everyone loses 1 point per card they own. Now, to make things interesting, many of the cards are special. Nobles count as 2 cards each. Spies are played face down and revealed at the end of the game. Assassins let you eliminate a card in the area they're played, and guards can't be assassinated. Finally, every player starts with 2 goal cards that are worth 3 points each, and these include things like having more of a specific family in front of you than the player on your left, requiring a specific family to be fallen from grace, etc. Basically, we kind of just gave you a full rules overview here.
The first time we played it, I had a misunderstanding, and I thought the cards that were above the table, it was going to be times that many what you had here. And I was putting way more math into the game than is actually in the game. It is super simple. You have 3 cards. You are playing all 3 of them somewhere, and then you pick up 3 more and you play all 3 of them next round. It is just elegantly simple. And despite what I was trying to make it more complex for the end game scoring, the end game scoring is dead simple. If you can, count to 5, you can do the end game scoring.
Yeah, I agree. That I was in the same boat. I was looking for more scoring, more twists and ways to rack up more and more points and all this stuff. And there's not. It's yes or no and a few points based on that yes or no basically. Is all you get out of it. So as long as everyone understands that going in and everything is clear, make sure you've fully read the rules and everything before you're doing that first teach, and everything will be smooth sailing from then on.
But unlike some games where I'm hoping for a little more chunkiness from it, like this is good where it is. It's perfect.
Yep.
Now, another standout on this game is the art. One of the fun parts about that is we kept discovering new things about the art as we played. And in the end, we were just enamored with it. Now, I will say, though, we did seem to find it better at 3 or 4. With 2, it was just a little too nasty and more random because, you're forced to play one card on your direct opponent, the other player. And then at 5, it actually felt too random because you didn't have enough control over your own destiny, especially in regards to those 2 bonus cards you were given. You can't make sure you have less red than the person on your left if you never draw a red card.
Yeah, when we played this at 2, there's nothing wrong with it. It's not broken, but I never need to play it at 2 again. It just wasn't that fun to me. Whereas when we played it at 3, I was like, this is a great game. I can't wait to get it to the table again. And the art is gorgeous, just hand down gorgeous. And it was so cool when I realized that all of the spies have masks and each one is different. The one that has the family that has the rabbit as their icon has a rabbit shaped mask, and the moth family has a butterfly shaped mask. And so that was cool. And then we realized as we were playing it some more, we're like, wait, the ones that are nobles that are worth ×2 all have crowns, and the assassins all have weapons in their hands, and the ones that are guards all actually have shields, and the art is all very similar. It's just one picture for each family, basically, with these small, subtle variations to the art based on the special ability of the card, which is just nice. It was just a nice little touch.
Yeah, the art for this game is fantastic. And I think the big difference between the 3-player game, which I loved, and the 5-player game, which I didn't partially because I think I played it second, is your VIP cards, the extra bonus point. You get 3 extra bonus points for each of 2 cards if you can complete those missions or whatever you want to call them by the end of the game. And unfortunately, when you have 5 players, you have very little opportunity to influence your ability to get those or not. You may get them, you may not, but the chances that you can determine whether or not you get those specific extra 3 or 6 points is mostly out of your hands. And that's where, because I had the ability to influence that in the 3-player game, it felt like it was lacking in the 5.
Up next, Deanna and I were out of town on a rather silly trip, and we ended up playing some Ascension while waiting for someone to bake us some Puffios. We started with the base game. This is just the digital app. Using the 10th anniversary edition, and honestly loved it. It was like riding on a bike. It was getting back to the base Ascension game, 2-player, killing I can't remember, cultists and collecting cards and trying to set up combos with the cards and so on. Then played again with the first expansion and still loved it, and it was awesome, and we loved it, and we're like, man, why don't we keep playing Ascension more? Then we started playing with Storm of Souls and the first expansion after that, which I don't remember the name of, and it immediately got to be too much, which is, I think now, why I got rid of my physical copy, because that's when we had stopped with our physical version. Once you've got events and soul stones and trophy creatures, it was just more than I wanted to keep track of. There was more going on. And recently we talked about how I got to play Ascension Legends, at Gamma Expo, which is the newest version that if it's not out soon, should be out soon. And I loved it. There was less going on. There were no events or no Stole Stones. It was just the base game with these new tracks. And it was just interesting to have this progression of, yes, Ascension, why have we ignored this for so long, to, oh, I think I know why we ignored this for so long.
Now, I was having fun with this. I really enjoyed that we were playing Ascension again, but we were playing it on Mo's cell phone, which is tiny. And the text is small, and even Mo was struggling to read some of it. So where it fell apart for me is when we got to Storm of Souls. You can't just kind of guess it by eyeballing, this one's giving me red and this one's giving me purchase power. And you actually have to read and car combo and play things in the right order. And I think possibly if I had been playing it on a bigger screen, like we talked about maybe bringing your tablet out next time, if we were playing it on a tablet, I might have enjoyed it. And it's not that Storm of Souls was too much. It was that it was too much on a little tiny screen where I couldn't read any of the damn cards.
See, I could read everything, and I just felt like it was too much. And I'm like, oh, I got to keep track of the event. And what's the event right now? And how many people do I have in my monsters I can trash? And turns were taking forever. You'd be like, oh, I did this, and I got a Soulstone. And let me draw a card that let me grab a Fanatic, and now I can sacrifice a Fanatic to get another Soulstone. And now this event has changed, and if I do this, I get to draw another card. And I'm like, I felt like it was like 10 minutes between turns, which is just not what I want.
Yeah, there have been, I can't remember. It's been a while since I've had an Ascension game open, but I do remember that there were a couple of the later expansions that added where it was really like, even when you're playing against the computer and it's going at like full speed, you're kind of watching a whole lot of things happen before it gets to be your turn again. And that can be really daunting when you're watching the computer just go on and on and on and on.
And to be honest, we're just talking about the second expansion. So it's not a later expansion. It was the second one ever released, the second starter set, and then the small box expansion that was added to it. I don't know. I no longer feel as much of a need to go reacquire the physical copy, though if I do, I'll get one of the new modern ones and probably just stick to the single box. Next up was some rounds of Santorini 2nd edition. This new version is from Roxley that not only goes back to the quality of the original Roxley version of the game from 2016, but actually improves on it. In addition to looking better, it actually includes a bunch of God cards and additional components and even some promo cards and from the various expansions that were released over the years. And I am so glad that they brought this one back because the version that was currently on the market from years from Spin Master is notorious for its terrible quality. And it's nice to have a nice solid chunky version of Santorini back with real cards.
So one of the things that really struck me playing this was just how low vision accessible it is. Like I could have played this right after my eye surgery when I was itching for a game and couldn't think of anything to fit in there, because you just need to know one very simple rule of what your god does and one very simple rule of what the other guy's god does. And it's set for the whole game. It's not going to change. And the reminder iconography is nice and big. You can probably look at it. And maybe not. And then all the chunky pieces, and you're placing them on the board within those rolls, right? So I'm like, oh, I could have been playing this like 2 months ago.
Yeah, the gameplay in 2nd edition is the same deceptively difficult to win abstract strategy game it's always been. For anyone who doesn't know it, you've got 2 workers on the board. You move a worker, then you build a single building block. The blocks stack up to 4 high. Once they're topped at the 4th level, they can't be built on again. And the goal is to walk up the steps to get one of your 2 workers to the 3rd level, to level 3 on any building. That's the base game. Just playing that way is solid. And actually, that's how the original version of the game released in 2024 from Gord played. That was the whole game. There were no gods. There were no interesting special powers. So when Roxley got the game, they rethemed it off of the Greek island of Santorini with the white buildings and the blue domed roofs and the Greek gods. And then each game plays exactly like that, but everyone gets a god that gives them an asymmetric ability. And well, now you know why I like this game so much. Examples include Artemis lets you move twice each turn. Demeter lets you build twice. The Minotaur lets you shove other pieces and so on. My only complaint about this game so far is Deanna is way too good at it. I need to find an opponent I can actually beat. Maybe I'll enjoy it a little more because she's 4-0 in our game so far. And each time we've tried a different suggested god pairing.
For me, I mean, this game is really cute to look at, right? But it kind of looks like a kid's toy. So I don't know. Mo said he doesn't feel this way, but when we go out to a brewery and I pull out a game and we pull out like what's the other one that I was embarrassed to play in public was the mountains out of molehills. I'm like, it looks like we are playing a game for toddlers, and someone's gonna come over and be like, yeah, where's your 3-year-old, and I don't know, I'm like self-conscious about it, that we're playing this super toyerific game that looks like it's meant to be played by preschoolers. But if we're out at a public play event where we're all playing games, this is going to make people come over and take a look at it. And it's got awesome components and the buildings look really cool. But when we're like out in the mundane world and we're the only people playing board games, I just feel kind of weird about it. Like I just pulled out Lego.
I totally build Lego at a restaurant table. So.
Also, in addition, this new second edition already has 4 expansions, which each add 17 new characters per expansion. And on top of that, there's a 5th expansion, Riddle of the Sphinx, which adds co-op play to the game.
Wow, I didn't think there were that many. I knew about the Riddle of the Sphinx, which is co-op, and I think it's also Legacy. And the fact that you're playing through a campaign that has a Gloomhaven-like spiral book that you flip through. So yeah, that one looks awesome.
I don't know if it's Legacy. It's an ongoing campaign, not necessarily Legacy.
Well, it's not Legacy in the fact you don't destroy anything or put stickers on, but you're meant to only play it through, well, I guess you could possibly play it through more than once. So I guess campaign game versus Legacy game. Yeah, I'm looking forward to bringing this one out. I think it's going to catch people's attention at our public play events. One of the big things I need to do is play it with 3 and 4 players. Though I'll say right now, if you don't own Santorini and the gameplay we just described sounds fun to you, this is the edition to buy. Like, this is the second edition, the essential. It utterly destroys the Spin Master version that's been around for the last few years and improves on the classic version. As for deciding to upgrade if you have the classic, that's going to be your call. And maybe we'll be able to share more about that once we get some more plays in.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to ask you. Your opinion. Would you feel the necessity to upgrade from the original printing that we had?
Well, again, I need to get our original printing out, count how many gods there are, kind of take a look at it. So, and look at the price point of this compared to the old one too. I can't answer that with the information I know now, which was we packed it on a trip and we played a bunch of games on one night. Next up, Sean joined us for game night at Brenda's, where we got in 3 different games in one night, which is pretty awesome. One was Courtisans, which we already talked about earlier, so I'm not going to get into detail about that one again. Next was Dawn. This is the hidden role village building game where you get to decide your role while playing the game. Now, I talked about this one after our first Cookie Bar event and talked about how well that went over, but this was your first play, Sean. What did you think?
So I think this was an interesting game, and I really didn't know what I was getting into. I had listened to what Mo said before, but otherwise was going in blind. And it was super fun. And I think the standout thing about this game, the game that makes this, or the aspect that makes this game what it is the fact that everyone can change factions throughout the game as many times as you want up until end game scoring. Yes. You can decide whether or not you are for the team or against it. And the difference that makes, the fact that changes, how many people are on the good side, changes how much scoring is required to win versus how you win if you're going against the team. That really makes this game stand out for what is otherwise could be a kind of a nothing much game. But when you add in that one feature, it becomes really interesting.
Yeah, I love the way you can swap roles. And my favorite part of this particular play was the fact that Gwen locked herself in. At the end of the game, she planned to be loyal. She had been playing loyal the entire game, but she had stacked treasure cards underneath her character card in hopes to pull them out later to use them as treasure, I think. She was pretty sure the allies were going to win, but she put so many high value treasure cards away, and then her last hand had no negatives, and she couldn't swap enough out to become an ally by the end of the game. And I thought that was kind of fascinating that she had no choice but to play Saboteur and then played the last round of the game completely different than she played every other round of the game, trying to sabotage everything for everyone else. Personally, I swapped that last round, but could have gone either way. I had my deck set up so I could swap either way. And I actually thought 3 of the players were allies. And if I joined them as a 4th, we wouldn't have the 120 points. And if I dropped out, I should have been able to win as the thing. But it ends up that with Gwen swapping sides, that now only 2 players were allies, and they only needed 60 points, and they had that on the board before we even scored the end buildings. And that's a good thing, because for the allies, none of the great buildings got built at all this game, which was unique to see. I'm really digging the gameplay in this. The shifting loyalties is done so well, and every game it's had a big impact. It's not like this subtle thing you can do that doesn't have much impact. It really does change up. And you have players like feel guilty for sabotaging things earlier because they decide to be loyal. And there's just a lot of interesting things going on. And I think the biggest thing I need people to know about this game is that it looks and sounds way more complicated than it is. It's a really simple card system placement where you're playing cards either to stop bad things from happening, or you're playing the cards instead as treasure to try to get buildings built. Like it's really a simple to learn game, but it looks big and it sounds like, oh, switching loyalties and building buildings and dealing with plagues. And like, no, the actual core mechanics are almost gateway level.
Yeah, and again, it really is the fact that you are able to switch that allegiance that makes it a great game, because despite how much you can talk about the game, it's dead simple. Like, anyone can pick up this game. You can teach this game to your mom real quick and easy. And then it's just a matter of, as you're playing the game, making those decisions. Oh, that's right. I could be evil, or I could be good, and whatever. And that comes out during the game, but that's mostly emergent play, not the basics of the game.
Finally, the last new to us game for this week is, it wasn't new to us, new to Sean. The last game we played at Brenda is Curses and Covens. That's from our friends at Good Games Publishing. Nod to Kim for that one. It's been a bit since this hit the table, so quick reminder, this is the 1 versus many deduction game, where one player is a witch hunter, the other players are villagers trying to hide the witches from the hunter and form a coven of 3 cards. Now, I've enjoyed this in the past, but this is one of the main reasons we try to play games multiple times before we review them. We have been playing Extreme, at least the one game I played with the kids. And then we started this game by the same problem, so much so that we managed to break the game to the fact I was ready to give it a negative review. Like, there's one strategy that's so ridiculously overpowered. Why would you do anything else? And then we found a thread online to figure out exactly what went wrong, because we were like, there's no way. There's got to be something we're doing wrong. Sean, you were the one that found the correction. So do you want to cover what happened?
Yeah, so you are able to, with a specific spell in the game, pass any number of cards to any player within the citizens. And this would, at first glance, allow you to wildly stack the odds against the hunter. For all of a sudden, the hunter has to pick from a giant hand of cards, and the odds of getting the cards they need without the other team getting the 3 witches they need are slim to none. It seemed like, oh gosh, this game is just completely broken. And we couldn't find anything wrong with this. It just seemed like it was actually broken, because there was a chance that the hunter could pull out the one card you needed and stop you, but it was a pretty long odds. Yet in the forums, a couple of other people had asked about, hand sizes and this, and someone pointed out the one specific rule that is in the rule book, but is easily overlooked. And that is that when the hunter pulls a witch out of a player's hand, the rest of that hand is immediately discarded. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, the whole balance changed, and it made sense. So unsurprisingly, playing by the actual rules of the game makes it a better game.
Yeah.
Yeah, the game is better when you play it by the rules. Who knew?
Actually, the game is so much better playing by the proper rules that it completely changed my mind on this game. Before I played this game, I thought it was interesting. I thought it was neat. It was better than most social deduction games, mainly because it's a little bit more logic deduction and there isn't a lot of there's bluffing, but you're not like talking bluffing. You're not like saying bids. You're just passing cards back and forth, and there's no direct lying required. So it was a step above most social deduction games for me, but now I really dig it, and the game is much more strategic and tactical, knowing that if the hunter picks just one witch, you lose your hand. Now, yes, it fixes the part we found broken with the spell, but the other thing is we found in my previous plays that the witches tended to win not by forming covens, but by getting the witch hunter to draw 2 ritual cards. And our strategy often was to stack one player with the witches and the ritual cards, playing the odds that they're going to draw 2 rituals. Well, now if the hunter just draws 1 witch out of that player's hand, the card's discarded. They're gone. The rituals are now buried, and you don't like shuffle them in. They're buried at the bottom of the deck. So it's going to take a bit to get those back out, and it made it much more balanced. No longer were we having the hunter lose because of 2 rituals like the second or third round into the game. The game became longer. There was more discussion. There were more cards being passed around, and honestly, it just became a better game. I love it now.
The witch hunter can't grab 2 cards from one person on one pop. They have, and you're like, wait, why does it matter what order? No, it matters. It matters what order. Wait, slow down. Take one, and then maybe you'll take a second one, because in between you could have to toss the whole hand out, right? So yeah, it made it play different and better. Like, by the rules, it's good. I don't know. I don't love this game. It's just not for me. But y'all seem to be having a good time with it.
Yeah, I mean, as social deductions games go, I'm not my favorite genre by far. One of the tricky aspects of this game is, depending on how you play and how aware everyone at the table is, watching everyone else's hands can become a vital aspect for the hunter. Paying attention, and it's really important in some cases for players to take their hand and reach under the table and shuffle them blindly in order to prevent the hunter from having as much knowledge as they would wish.
Yeah, because when Gwen was the hunter, she was playing very close, careful attention, and I watched her look at me, take a card, and then pass it over. And as soon as I did it, I went, she knows what card I just passed. She knows, because that's the one she handed me. And and after that, we started making it almost mandatory that people had to shuffle their hands.
Yeah, and it was interesting because that's emergent gameplay that isn't really mentioned anywhere in the rule book. And I'm like, yes, the hunter sits back and listens to everything everyone's saying and watches the card get placed, but like actually paying attention to when you hand you a card, where you put it in your hand, and then when handing cards out, if you grab the same way, like that was next level stuff as far as I was concerned. I'm like, damn, Gwen, you don't cross her the wrong way in real life here, because that was very smart. At this point, we've actually played 6 times. I'd be ready to review it, but I actually want to take this back out to our public play events and make sure people are playing with the proper rules. Now, there was a group that really liked this game and played multiple rounds last time at Walkerville and enjoyed it, and I actually had them make notes, and I made notes on what they had to say for our review. I think they actually played properly, though, because I gave them the quick overview and then got called away, and when I came back, they had fix some things based on the rule book. So I think they were playing the right way, but I'm not certain. So hopefully in the next month, with some time off, we'll get this out to a public play event, get another group to play it, and then we'll be ready to review it, which I got to say, like, I think you basically got the gist at this point. This is a social deduction game for people who don't like social deduction games, with some really clever gameplay.
Well, that's all for what we've been playing. What about you? What hit your table recently? We would love to hear about it on the Tabletop Bellhop Discord at discord.tabletopbellhop.com. We've got a channel there called What You've Been Playing, specifically for people to talk about their recent plays. Can your crew save themselves by following the captain and capturing the prize? That's the premise of Oh Captain, My Captain, an improv-based role-playing game from Simon Schuster and James D'Amato of the One Shot Podcast Network.
I do have to thank Simon & Schuster for sending us a couple review copies of this. Oh Captain, My Captain is a card game designed to give your group a complete role-playing game experience in under an hour. The entire game is composed of a single deck of cards and is meant to be learned as you play. This game does not require a GM, DM, or any form of moderator. It's very clearly inspired by For the Queen by Alex Roberts, which is now with Darrington Press. That said, it's actually quite different from For the Queen, both in premise and mechanics, and we'll get into that in a bit.
The game comes in a small, very solid box that looks like the type you would get with a tarot deck, which makes sense because the cards are tarot size. Inside the box is about 100 cards, and when you open the game, you're meant to open the deck and just start reading from card 1. This will introduce you to the game and the rules. Once you already have the rules down, there's a set of summary cards you can use to dive right in. Check out our unboxing video to see the box, the card art, and more.
The premise of Oh Captain, My Captain is that your crew has fallen on hard times due to a recent disaster. The captain who you trust has come up with a plan to fix everything. That plan involves a perilous journey to find and take possession of a prize.
Now, what's very cool about this game is that's all you know going in. There's no character creation. There's no preset world. There's no universe. There's no set adventure. There's no path. There's no dungeon math. Nothing. This is it. You get the premise and that's it. All of the rest happens as you play the game. With the next step being the group has to agree on who your captain is, which is done through a wonderfully diverse set of captain art cards. And what I love most about this is both the diversity, including on the cards, and the fact that these aren't all pirate captains, despite what the game looks like. There's a sports team captain, there's sci-fi captains, there's a captain that looks like an orc, and so on.
Yeah, the first time we sat down to play this, those sports team captains threw me for a loop. Once you've chosen your captain, you set up the deck of question cards with 3 to 4 cards per player, depending on how long you want the game to go. That should hit the 1 hour time limit for most groups with 5 or less players. For a bigger group, you may want to go with less cards. And there's also nothing stopping you from using more cards and playing a longer game.
Now, each turn, the active player flips over the top card and reads it out loud. It will present a leading question like, the captain has a weakness that they hide from the crew. Why have you kept that secret? Or, what do you hope the captain sees when they look into your eyes? And what do you fear they will find instead? Or, let's do one more. On this journey, you had a dream about the prize that rattled you. What was it, and who do you tell about it?
So players can answer these questions with as much detail as they like. They can answer in character or third person, or honestly just kind of have an open discussion about the question. If the question doesn't really fit the way the story is going, they can pass the question, or they can ask it of someone else if you think it'd be more interesting for one of the other players to answer. Now, at any point, if anyone feels uncomfortable by the question or the answers being given, the game does include an X card safety tool for dealing with that.
As the active player is giving their answer and after it, the other players are encouraged to ask questions based on that answer. In this way, the players together develop their characters, details about their captain, facts about the journey, and they can hint at what they expect the prize to be. They just can't define the prize yet.
The prize is defined at the end of the game. Once you've gone through your set amount of questions, you get to an end card. This has you work together to define the prize, with each character adding an adjective about it, and the group using the narrative developed so far to come up with what you have been searching for.
Finally, there's a vote. This is based on how each of the players' characters feels about the captain. Do they still trust him? Do they think he's been overly aggressive, and so on? The result of this question has the group read off one of 3 different ending cards. Now, after reading off the ending card, the players answer the question presented and then work together to bring the story to a satisfying conclusion.
So this is a game where it really helps to work together. As an improv game, you want to yes and, not no but. The more a group works together, even if there is some conflict in answers, the general progression forward of a cohesive plot makes it more fun for everyone than if someone is just in there trying to blow up the whole game.
Yeah, and before getting into more of our thoughts on the game, I do want to point out that I love For the Queen. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and I think it's a fantastic game that bridges the gap between board, card, and role-playing game. I've had a great time with both, with experienced gamers, experienced role players, and people I've known for years, as well as with people I've never met before and who've never played a single tabletop role-playing game in their life. It's this love of For the Queen that actually got me to agree to even look at Oh Captain, My Captain.
And as I mentioned when we were discussing this earlier in the tabletop section, one of the ways that I feel that this is set out to be different than For the Queen is For the Queen has that you are in love with the Queen aspect, which tends to lead towards stories about love triangles and perhaps some adult content. Whereas Captain, My Captain, the premise is that you trust the captain. So you're going in with a premise that is not romance based. And and that makes a difference with where the stories lead.
Interestingly, I have never played For the Queen. Shockingly, I know. How I'm not actually quite sure. It's just never actually come up. So I'm starting with Oh Captain, My Captain as the first of the Descended from the Queen games, rather than starting from For the Queen itself.
Yep, which actually I think is good because that gives you a different perspective. Because for one thing, Oh Captain, My Captain is not just For the Queen. It's not the same game with a pirate theme. As well as already mentioned, it's a team with a captain theme, not just pirates. And unlike For the Queen, there are different endings. There are multiple different endings. And the questions tend to feature more than one question per card. And the game is meant to be played quickly. Like the goal of this game is half an hour to an hour. So you spend a little less time developing the world and the characters. Now, again, as Deanna mentioned, the other big one is there's no insistence on romance, which is a very different premise and does lead to a different type of story. I love the various different captains, like the amount of options presented. Like it's one of the hardest things about an improv game is just having every possible option. And by presenting you with a set number of captains, it opens your mind and closes at once, right? So it narrows the choices, but then points you to so many different options that you may not think of, right? Like when I got this game, I thought it was about fantasy pirates. I thought no matter what, we are doing a game about pirates in a fantasy universe, and that is not it at all. There are so many different captains presented with diversity. You got men, women, there's someone in a wheelchair, there's non-humans, there's a mix of genres, there's sci-fi. And yes, there's like what looks like a hockey player, right? And I'm like, that's really cool, actually.
I loved the wide range of options for who you picked for the captain, but I'm going to be honest and say I did not love the art. Like the art for the Queen is standout. It's gorgeous across the board. And this was a mixed bag. Some of it was just, it was just okay.
Yeah, the variety of art was a variety of art. So, some was great, some not so much. The thing that really captured me about this game is I was expecting something more involved. I was expecting something longer, not necessarily dragging on, but more involved. And the fact that we sat down, I'd never played the game, never played For the Queen. We sat down, I learned it, and we played a game in the term of one beverage was pretty remarkable to me. So the fact that it plays that quickly was really a standout moment to me.
Yeah, and that's actually the part of the design goal of this is for it to be this super quick playing, almost filler improv role playing game. And I think in a way they did a really good job with this. But the one thing to watch for, especially for people who know other games Descended from the Queen, is you may find yourself wanting more. Now, again, I point out there's nothing that's going to stop you from just adding more cards and answering more questions. Now, what I love the most about this game, and it's also in For the Queen and probably every game Descended by the Queen, is just the fact you start with a blank slate. And by the time you get around the table once, people are already getting into characters and you're already learning things about the world and you're starting to learn about the captain. And I love that you can go in with an idea. You could set up and go, okay, we're playing sci-fi, and you may be like, all right, I plan on playing an ensign who doesn't really know what they're doing, and they kind of come in with a character concept and then try to mold that to the questions and answer them as that character. Or as I prefer to do, go in with nothing in mind and just see what happens. I honestly know nothing about my characters in any of the Descended by the Queen games until I get that first card and answer that first question. I find that's great because the game can appeal to different types of role players who want different things from the game. Like playing the character in character with a funny voice is totally viable, but so is just describing things and group storytelling and sourcing the table.
So I really love the fact that safety tools are built into the game. And at any point, if things start going away that make you feel uncomfortable, you can just discard it. I love that that is built in.
Yes.
I also like the way if you get a question that you're like, oh, this just doesn't jive with where I want to go with my character, you can pass it off. You're not stuck with the card that you drew. They give you a lot of wiggle room there to be able to develop things the way you want them to go, even though everything is not going to go to plan, because you are at a table with other people that have other ideas, and geez, our crew ends up doing some wacky things that I wouldn't have predicted, right? But yeah.
Yeah, I have to admit, I as my first experience and what I suspect will probably work for me going forward with Descended for the Queen games is also going in blank. That first question is when I'm going to decide what my character is, what I'm about, where my paths and allegiance lie and such lie, all based on that first card, starting from that first card and developing from there. Sure, you can come up with things going in. It's like you could look at the captain and try and pregame, but it's just as fun to sort of wait and see what happens.
Yep. You can also preset the game up. So one of the games I hosted of this, we set it up saying, this game we're playing Star Trek. That is the goal. We're going to stick to Star Trek tropes. Yes, you still win with a blank plate, but everyone adapted to fit that. And we had all the Star Trek roles. And honestly, it played fantastic. That's actually one of my favorite plays of Oh Captain, My Captain I've had. Now, where things do fall down a bit in this game to me is the ending, the kind of forced ending. Now, I love that there are multiple endings and that things don't come down to a single decision. But getting the actual endings, once you see them to fit your ongoing story, can be a bit of work. Now, I will admit, once you play the game a few times and you know the endings, you can kind of do like Sean mentioned earlier with a bit of groupthink and kind of aim towards the style of the endings the game presents, if that makes sense. But the first time you get to one of those endings, your first play, it can be a bit jarring. Now, that said, every game I played, with every group I played it with, was able to get each of them to work, to make sense. I also found defending the prize a little awkward. There's the whole thing here where people are adding different adjectives. And if you have an idea in your mind of what you expect the prize to be, and then they throw out an adjective that does not meet your vision, it can add to a little bit of conflict at the game table where different people want the prize to be different things. And to me, it just didn't fit well with the whole flow of the other game where it's always been yes and up till that point. It just, to me, stretched a little too far. It wanted more conceit than I expected.
The game, particularly in the game that I played with Sean and you, the ending felt very awkward. Like it was difficult to make it jive with the story that we had ongoing. And if I remember correctly, even that just taken on its own, the wording on the card was a little awkward. Like it was just awkwardly phrased. So I'm not 100% in love with the endings. I want an expansion pack that adds more endings. I want, I don't know, to all put out all the endings on the table and vote on them and come to them by consensus or something to end up with an ending that fits your story that you got up to that point with in some way that's just not quite mashing up there.
Yeah, it seems to me that while you can make it work by sitting around and discussing and having, philosophical discussion about the words on the card and everyone's ideas and oh, well, if we think of it as this, then we can envision them doing this. And that's how that based on this, that, and the other thing. But it's a lot of work to make that happen. And after a game where everything had flowed up until then, it's kind of a little bit of a hit the brakes moment.
Yeah. Now, of course, the other big problem with Oh Captain, My Captain is the nature of the game itself. This is an improv game. This is a game about being put in the spotlight and having to answer questions, building a character from nothing, building a world, developing a captain with only a simple premise to start with, and previous answers that other people have given to build on. And there are people out there that are not going to like this type of game. Like if you're not into improv style RPGs, you probably aren't going to enjoy Oh Captain, My Captain. That said, I do find the system in this game to present a very low pressure style of improv, and you do get a lot of prompts. You've got the general premise, and the way the question cards are worded is honestly brilliant for bringing out the information you need to develop the character and the journey and the prize. Like that's all worked into the game very well. So I do encourage anyone who's scared of improv gaming or worried about improv gaming, but still curious enough that they might want to give it a try, I think this game is actually more welcoming than For the Queen and other improv RPGs I've played.
I hate improv RPGs. I dislike pass the stick role playing. It gives me an anxiety attack. I actually don't dislike this game. I like it. I wouldn't say I love it, but I like it. It is, like Mo said, it's sort of a low pressure improv. The questions are worded in such a way that they give, a lot of things spring to mind. You're not just going from a blank slate. And I love that the rules allow you to pass off a question when you do just, your mind blanks out and you're like, I don't know what to do with that. And you can just give it to someone else.
My immediate thought when we started playing this game is that more than an improv RPG, it's like a lot of improv RPG character creation. So if you're creating a character for Masks, you are given a number of questions at the bottom of your playbook to help develop the entire party and your own character as a whole. And that's very much what this game reminds me of, is going through those questions that each of the characters has to process to develop the team. And in some ways, you are doing that because you are all sharing a ship with your captain. And so less like an RPG and more like that character creation in modern improv RPGs.
Yeah, and I've actually seen Oh Captain, My Captain, instead of being called a role-playing game, being called a world-building game, which I think is an apt description. And now I haven't heard anyone say it yet in Oh Captain, My Captain, but I've heard it in games of For the Queen. People who want to go on and play their characters, who then take what they learned about themselves in that game and use that to play a character in a different RPG, which I actually think is kind of fascinating. We even talked about running a game of For the Queen as the start of, say, a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And that would build the world, that would build some of at least 2 alliances that are going on. And I can totally see doing that with this game as well. Now, my other complaint about For the Queen is the fact, or sorry, not For the Queen. My only other complaint, actually, it is a complaint about For the Queen. My only other complaint about this game is the box design. It's a tall box where the lid slides off the top. The problem with this is that if you pick it up without applying enough pressure, the bottom part of the box will fall out, sending cards everywhere. The original printing of For the Queen had the same problem, and I was surprised that they actually mimicked that box style. Well, this actually hasn't happened to me with Oh Captain, My Captain, but I've had to play 52 card pickup with For the Queen 3 times so far, and it's not fun. So be sure when you do pick this up that you hold the bottom of the box while picking it up, or just make sure you squeeze enough that nothing slides out.
I am so amused by the fact that you decided to mention this, because today, while picking up For the Queen to put it in the backdrop, I managed to spill it all over the floor in the basement.
See? See? It's a silly box design, really. So one of the things I like to do in these reviews, and I'd like Sean and Deanna to share the same, is some of your favorite moments playing Oh Captain, My Captain. So for me, it includes coming up with a unique way to play the game that's not a pirate ship, a captain and its crew. I mentioned I played a game that was Star Trek. That was fantastic. The game Deanna, Sean, and I played was actually a Supers game, which I thought was kind of neat. Though partway through, we still ended up on like a ship. So to me, it kind of went back to pirates. It was like Pirate Supers. It was pirates with superpowers. I really like that. I love when a player gets a card and before they read it out loud, you can see the look in their eye where it's the perfect question and the perfect answer. And they've got the perfect thing that's going to do something awesome to the story. And you can see that anticipation. And they're like, well, my question is, I love that moment. One game we played, the ending really didn't fit well. And I loved the collaboration between 7 players to come up with a solution that not only worked to fit the ending card as written, but also fit the spirit of the story we were telling, which involved a kid's birthday party. I also loved introducing this game to my daughter, Gwen. This was really her first ever story game experience, indie hippie game, indie RPG experience that's pretty much pure improv. And it was awesome to see her develop into this game and get past her shyness. I did a mean thing and made her go first. That was a bad call. She passed the card to someone else, but once it got around to the table, she got into it. And then she loved the game. She loved the freedom that was available in this game to do what she wanted.
Like I said, the prompts are well written. And I think for me, okay, you and Sean both said you like to go in with a blank slate. I like to go in with a rough idea of what I want to do as a character. But when you get that question that just, like, now I know what's driving me. Now I know exactly where I'm going for the rest of this game. It was just the perfect thing. Things snap into place in your head and everything starts to make sense with the story that we're all building together. I like that moment.
I think the interesting thing for me was just sort of that whole moment where you pick it up and it's like, okay, we decided by looking at the captain card we picked, we're going to do supers. Okay, well, you pick up that first card and just all of a sudden that character concept congeals in my mind just from that first question. It's like, it's asking something and I'm like, oh, well, wouldn't it be interesting if my character was invisible? And he's a spy, and okay, there we go. And I was off and running. And that sort of cohesion of a concept just based on a few words on a card in front of you really is really such fun. And it's the same reason why I like creating characters in modern RPGs. It's the same sort of idea where all of a sudden just a couple of words, a thought, and, based on whatever someone had said before, maybe puts it all together into a concept.
So this is silly, but when I was playing it with Mo and Sean, my eyes were really bugging me because it wasn't that long after I'd had eye surgery and they were watering and stinging and bugging me. So I was like going to close my eyes and sit here and play this game and answer questions with my eyes closed. And that made it so much easier. I've decided I'm just going to sit there with my eyes closed forever when I have to play an improv game. So if you ever meet me in person and we're at a con and I'm sitting there with my eyes closed, staring off into the ether, you'll know what it is. I've come up with my workaround.
There you go.
If you're shy like me, maybe you should try this.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure you can tell from all of this, we dig this one. It's been a hit with the local story gamer group. It's been fun with people I played with for years, and it's been a hit with strangers at our public play events. I find For the Queen fans really dig it. The only complaint I often get, though, is that it's short, right? It's half an hour to an hour, and you don't get enough depth. Personally, that did bother me. The first time I played, like when I play For the Queen, we play with half the deck. There's lots of questions being asked and lots of development before you get to the end. You don't get that in this game. You're only answering 2 to 3 questions max. And if other players don't have a lot of questions for you, that can go even quicker. I will point that out, actually, just to sidetrack. One of the big things that makes this game work is ask the other players questions. Don't just let them answer the question on the card and get away with it. Dig deep, get the good questions in there, ask leading questions. That's what really makes this work, especially when you're only going to get like 2 cards each. So they really want to know more about someone's character, ask a question about it. So what I'm going to jump back to what I was saying. So it did bother me that this wasn't as deep, but then going in knowing it's supposed to be a quick game and playing it knowing it's a quick game made it better. And I found it more enjoyable with that goal in mind, knowing that I'm only going to get a couple questions. And honestly, I think that's where the endings work better, because if you fully developed too much, it's hard to get things to fit. Whereas if you're playing it loosey-goosey and you've only answered a couple questions, it's a little easier to get those endings to fit in. Now, if you do prefer a longer game, there is nothing stopping you from playing more cards. I guess the only thing is you might start getting used to them, but these questions are brilliant. If you dig improv style, no DM, pass the stick RPGs, which combine both world and character building with play, you need to pick up Oh Captain, My Captain. I actually recommend this over For the Queen at this point.
And if this isn't your thing, we still encourage you to give the game a shot. One of the advantages of the shorter playtime is that you can get in one quick game to see how you like it without wasting a lot of your game night.
Yeah, and if anyone's in the Windsor, Ontario area and wants to try this, hit me up on social media. Let me know. I don't plan on getting rid of this game. I will happily bring it out and I'll facilitate or play.
On this journey, you were curious about Oh Captain, My Captain. The Bellhop team presented you with an overview. Has it convinced you to pick up the game? What part sounded the most interesting to you?
Answered this question wherever you found this review or over on the Tabletop Bellhop Discord, which you can find at discord.tabletopbellhop.com.
Roll the Bones in Emerald Skulls, a combination of push your luck dice game and real-time gambling board game from Thunderworks Games.
So first up, thanks Thunderworks for hooking us up with a copy of Emerald Skulls and the playmat. That's awesome. Thank you, Jess. This real-time game plays up to 6 players with the core box, but there's an expansion that we don't have that brings it up to 8. It was designed by Stephen Dast, featuring artwork from Diego Sa, and it's set in the world of Ulos, the universe started in the game Role Player, and which has grown through many other games, some of which we've reviewed in the past, like Cartographer's Heroes and Stone Spine Architects.
In Emerald Skull, the active player is playing a push your luck dice game about rolling dice and placing them on a skull. That's pretty interesting on its own. At the same time, the remaining players are placing bets and counter bets on that active player's rolls. The quicker you bet, the better the payout.
Emerald Skulls comes in a fairly small box, which has a small folded main board, wooden betting tokens for each of the players, 7 dice, some betting cards, tiny green translucent cubes, and a bunch of cardboard gear tokens. You can pick up a playmat to replace the board, which is 2-sided and also works with Goblin Vault, a different Thunderworks game set in the same universe. They also sell a set of metal gears, which we wish we had, and there's an expansion Mo mentioned that ups the player count by 2.
Metal Gears are so nice. Like, I'm still kicking myself for not asking for a set of those. They'd be great for a number of games. Honestly, anything Steam work. But anyway, back to what we have in the base version, retail version of Emerald Skull. Component quality is good. The basic board works, but the playmat is better. Not just because it's larger, but also because it has a spot to hold the little snot cubes. Dice are etched, which I love to see, so they're not going to wear out over time. And I like the solid chunkiness of the betting tokens. So they are a thin, like they're wood, they're fairly light, but there's something about the size of them, and they make a nice smack when you put them down on the table. Rulebook's good. You get a ton of different betting cards, which is great for replayability, though I do wish there were descriptions on what each bet was for more clearly on the cards. Every time we play this game, we have to reference the instructions for the full details, pretty much every game, when using at least the advanced betting.
You start a game of Emerald Skulls by creating a gear pot, and the size of that pot is based on the number of players. You then lay out the board or mat, and each player chooses a color and grabs the 2 betting tokens and a summary card for that color. Then place out a set of betting cards. There are a set of 6 basic ones that are recommended for your first play, and there are also a set of advanced cards that we strongly encourage you move on to as soon as possible, especially if you're playing with hobby board gamers. Determine a start player, grab the 3 dice, and start rolling.
Since there's basically 2 parts to this game, being the tumbler or being a bettor, we're going to start by describing the game the tumbler is playing, which is a push your luck dice game. The dice in Emerald Skulls have 6 sides with numbers 1 to 5 on them once each, then a skull on the final side. The board depicts a skull with 5 levels to place dice on, the lower jaw, upper jaw, nose, 2 eyes, and a gem in the forehead of the skull. These correspond to the numbers on the dice. The jaws and the nose can hold any number of dice, but you can only fit 1 die in each eye and only 1 on the gem spot.
So the active player is called the tumbler. They're going to grab 3 dice for free. Then if they have any gears, they can buy additional dice at a cost. They then roll their dice. You then have to place 1 set of dice. A set of dice is all dice the same number, which can also be combined with any number of skulls, which are basically wild, count as any number. Now, the dice placed have to have at least the value of the highest value die already placed or higher. If you can't place your dice, you bust, your turn's over, and you get nothing.
After you roll, if you have no dice left, you pay out. You're going to get gears based on the dice placed, getting more gears the higher the level of the skull you reach, with a bonus for placing a die in the gem. If you have dice left, you can chicken out. You still pay out based on what you currently have up, but on the lower scoring side of the board, or you roll again with the dice you have left, following the same rules.
What this means is that you roll and fill a layer of board with dice. Then you re-roll and have to add to the same layer or play higher up. You keep rolling until you run out of dice. You chicken out or you fill the top layer. As long as you don't bust, you will collect gears.
So there's also a couple special rules to watch for. If you bust and have any dice in the 3, the nose spot, you can pick the nose. You get your die back and you get to re-roll. You can only do that twice in a single round. Now, when the nose spot pays out, instead of getting coins or gears, you get re-roll cubes, these green, translucent, snot-looking cubes, which you can spend while tumbling. If you bust and you have one of these cubes, you can spend it, take a die from the pot, and re-roll all your dice. Now, you can't do this if you already have all 7 dice. Also, don't forget the placement restrictions where you can only place 2 dice in the eye slots and 1 in the gem.
While all of this is going on, the other players are going to be placing bets on what they predict the outcome from the tumbler will be. Players each have 2 betting tokens, and there will be 6 to 8 betting cards on the table in play, most of which will have multiple options on them. Whenever the tumbler is shaking the dice in their hands, the other players are free to place bets. To do this, they slap one of their tokens down next to the appropriate card. If there's already a bet placed in that spot, the new one goes on top.
So the first thing that the betting cards do is offer the tumbler new ways to earn gears. These are called jackpot bets and require the tumbler to fill in the skull with a specific pattern and then awards the tumbler a fixed amount of gears that's always higher than what they would have earned just by normally cashing out. An example is the scarred face that awards the tumbler with 20 gears if they can place exactly 1 die on each level. There's another that pays out if all you do is place dice on the jaws.
Now, after the tumbler's paid out, which could be a jackpot, you then resolve each betting card in numerical order. If a player places a good bet, they get paid the amount shown on the card, which could be modified by players placing opposing bets. If multiple people bet on the same thing, the player who bets first gets the max amount, and any following bets up to 2 pay out less. Now, the game ends the exact moment that the last gear from the gear pool is taken, which is why you have to resolve things in the proper order. The roller first, then bets in numeric order. At that moment, the player with the most gears wins.
You can also play Emerald Skull solo, in which you set up a 3-player game, and it's you versus Vrax and Kerr the Red, who, of course, are cheating. They're goblins, after all. You must use the standard betting cards, and Vrax and Kerr start the game with 40 gears shared between them. Each turn, you decide how many extra dice to buy, and then flip up a card from the opposition deck. And this shows you what bets Vrax and Kerr make, a total of 3. You then play as your turn as the tumbler, like normal. The game ends with all the gears run out of your, the game ends when all the gears run out or you make it through the opposition deck. At the end, if you have more gears than the pair, you're going to win. You can also adjust the difficulty by removing opposition cards to make it harder, or by starting off the cheating pair with less gears.
So I got to discover this game at Gamma Expo, where we played through a full game during one of the open game nights. We played with all the upgrades and the expansion, and I am really kicking myself still for not picking up those gears. The group we had playing was really into it, and we had a great time with groans and cheers and jeering and lots of back and forth. And I got to say, when you get a group willing to be a bit loud, who are quick with their bets and rather competitive, this game really shines. It was this game that convinced me this would be a perfect fit for us because I thought the family would dig it. But more importantly, I thought this would be a huge hit at our public play events, especially the ones at the brewery. The problem was it wasn't. I added the game to our menus. I tried to make it sound appealing with my description. I tweaked it a couple weeks. We had it out on display and no one bid. No one was interested. The next time I set it up with the play mat, I had it out with the dice there and not a single bite. Then finally, when we did get a group to play, they found it a bit too much. And honestly, the first time we played with Brenda and the kids, we had the same problem.
Now, well, to be fair, this game has not interested me. This game, nothing about this game was really drawing me in and making me want to play the game. But I was pushing it at our public play events. I was actually still, despite myself not being interested, trying to get people to play this game at public play events. But for some reason, it just didn't catch.
Yeah, and one of the biggest problems we found with this game is that it looks like a simple, quick playing dice game. It's something people can just walk up to, you hand them a pair of dice, say roll, and they're good to go. But that's not it. This game actually has a lot of little rules and idiosyncrasies, as you just heard in their description of the game, there's picking noses, and different levels can hold different numbers, and you can make different sets. And then there's these jackpots you have to worry about. Now, I've heard other reviewers and people call this craps for gamers, which honestly isn't wrong, but you mean gamers who are people who have experienced board game plays and have played a bunch of different games. Like, I wanted this game to be like craps, like quick and approachable, and it's really not. And to me, that's the game's biggest downfall. There's a learning curve, both for the tumbler rules and exactly how the betting works. And that gets in the way of the game being the instant hit I wanted it to be.
I think it can be quick and approachable for heavy hobby gamers, but not for your casual game night person.
Yeah, I think it's showing as a weight of 1.67 on Board Game Geek. And I think that is for experienced gamers.
Yeah.
Non-gamers want craps. Roll the dice, bust or don't bust, keep rolling, bet as necessary. And it's just a little bit more than that that pushes people past what they were expecting. It's really, you're going in with one expectation and the game isn't meeting that.
Now, here's where it twists things around to more positive, because we have eventually gotten the game played. We got it out. Our first few events, we didn't. And what we found we had to do was people basically twist people's arms. Be like, hey, you looking for something to play? How about we try this fun dice game? Hey, you over there who just finished a game, do you want to try something new I really like? Like, people aren't picking on their own. So we've had to, lead the horse to water in a way. Because once you get a group of players, after the first round, once they've figured out the game, once people have internalized the push your luck dice game part of Emerald Skulls, you end up with a fantastic real-time betting game. Plus, once you get that group playing and having fun, you do tend to start getting the crowds. And that's where other people come over interested, is when you've got this group of 5 people around the table and people are rolling like, oh, I bet on that. And it starts getting a little loud. And then you get that crowd that sits back and watches them play, and they see how things are playing out. And then they want to jump in and play. And now that's how I like to present the game, because it almost takes like sit back and watch an experienced group play to get it. Then you can jump in. So if I can find a group that knows how to play and ask people to watch, then join in the next round, that has worked out really well, and definitely way better than cold pitching the game.
And the game is, like, particularly with the playmat, it's very visually striking, so it looks great. And we've also found that just having it set up on the table has gotten people's attention too, because it, for a simple dice game, it's fairly visually striking. And it's everything that you said it was at your first game at Gamma Expo. When you get that group going with it, it's rambunctious, it's loud. People are like holding their breath, edge of your seat, betting and really getting into it. It is a vibrant game when you get a group going with it.
Yeah, one thing, another thing that can possibly drive players away from this is, again, it looks like this simple dice rolling, push your luck game, little bit of betting, but the rulebook is 24 pages.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, there's a lot going on there. It's got an FAQ and examples and setups, and that in itself, while necessary, can be a little overwhelming.
Now, where I start to really enjoy Emerald Skulls is after a few plays, when we were playing with the advanced betting cards. I find them way more interesting than the basic betting cards. And what you find is an emergent gameplay that makes the game more tactical. And it's that moment you realize as the tumbler that you shouldn't necessarily just be trying to get the best roll you can and try to hit that jackpot that's worth the most money. The real tactics is looking at what everyone else is betting and trying to deny the other players their bets. So yeah, well, it might be great if you tooth out or you pick the nose and fail. You're actually going to get more gears in relation to the other players if you do something different. And there's a little math there. So it's sometimes better to, instead of trying to get the big thing, maybe even like chicken out. So you at least get some gears, but everyone else gets nothing. And I find that interaction and bit of gameplay fascinating. And to me, that's where the game really hit a sweet spot. And to me, that's a sweet spot on both sides of the roles in the game, because you're playing more tactically as the tumbler, and then it becomes more important how you play as the gambler, including maybe holding off on your bets a bit so that the tumbler doesn't, and like only betting on sure things. And it was that long-term it's not long term, but like the tactical strategy in this game is surprisingly deep. And honestly, I think that's the design goal of the game. And that's why you need all these little weird rules and everything, and why it's a little more complicated is to appeal to the more Euro gamers, really, with a push your luck dice game. Now, due to this being a push your luck game, obviously some of my favorite moments are those long shot rolls, right? When you're shooting for the moon, when you go for a jackpot, you go for the scarred face, and you buy it so you've got 5 dice, and you're rolling it, and you end up having to pick the nose to get the reroll, and you still manage to completely fill the skull. And honestly, every single time you gem out, it feels good in this game. That's a design goal. Like if you can gem out, that's the best way. You're placing a 5 in that final gem, you get the max payout besides some of the jackpots, and it just feels good. No matter when you do it, you're just like, yes, I skulled out. It also feels awesome when you use every die in your hand. If you can place every die, there's just something about that feels good, even if it may not be the best way to pay out. Another one I like is getting that bet in early, where you're like, the person rolled one roll and you're like, oh, they got 2 teeth. I bet you they're going to go for the whole teeth, and getting that payout in the end. I also like when you bet against someone else, especially if you're playing on something like that pays off double, like 2 times based what the other players bet. So I'm like, you were going to skull out, and everyone else is like, no, I'm going to bet you're not going to skull out. And the bets in that case become based on how many people bet against you. So everyone's invested, right? Everyone's watching for that final roll. Are they going to skull out or not? Because every player, you're either getting paid out or you're going to fade. It's full of victory cheers, bad roll groans, and so close moments. That's what keeps me coming back for more, and why I keep trying to push this game, because honestly, it's a ton of fun. You just got to get past that learning curve, right? It's just a little more complicated than I want it to be.
And I think that's really sort of the thing that pushed me away from this game primarily. I actually like some push your luck games. I have played so many games of Can't Stop, it's not funny. But Can't Stop is just you're rolling, it's fun. You stop or you bust, and then you move on and you're chatting and you're having a drink. There's almost too much thinking involved in a push your luck game when it gets to this game for me. And that's what pushed me back from this game being the enjoyable game I want from a push your luck game. I just want to be able to do my thing, do the rolls, win or lose, and then it's someone else's turn.
I think if most people who enjoy push your luck games, though, should check this game out. Definitely give it a look. Try it out if you can, because like the push your luck, the tumbler roll, that is quite fun. And I think the fact that the publisher included solo rules where that's all you do, you don't place any bets, indicates their faith in the game as just a push your luck dice game. So you can play it without any of the betting. So I think you should try it out if you are a fan of push your luck games. More so, though, if you like betting games, especially real-time betting games, I think you're going to love this one, mainly due to its unique theme. Because, yes, there are quite a few betting games out there, but many of the betting board games are either based on stock markets or races, and it's great to see something completely different. And if you're a craps fan, you just have to make sure not to expect craps. Like they drop your expectations, but you're going to have fun rolling those dice. I think you should check this one out. Now, my biggest suggestion for anyone, honestly, is give this game a shot. Yes, there's a learning curve. No, it's not the quick playing, grab the dice and go game I was expected, or maybe even hoping for, but this is a really solid game. It just took me a bit to find the fun. And I know that sounds kind of terrible. And we talked about games that are fun from turn one. Yeah, it takes a bit of learning curve, but once you do get past it, we've really had a lot of fun with this. And it's growing more and more popular at our public play events. And part of that is word of mouth. Like people are like, no, play that one. I played it last week. It's a lot of fun. I think there's a great game here. It just may not be quite what you expect it to be.
Well, we could keep going and get into all the fiddly details, talking about what favorite betting cards are or preferred strategies, but I have a feeling that would just lead to a bust. So we're going to chicken out here and let you make your own mind up about Emerald Skulls, the latest game in the Thunderworks role-player universe of Ulos.
Now that you've collected your winnings, can I point you over to our gift shop? Be sure to stop there on your way out. I just redecorated this week with some new items, new color options for shirts, and most importantly, tweaked pricing. If you pick out at least $50 US in items, we're even going to throw in free shipping.
Well, that was the double bell.
That means our shift's coming to an end, and we're going to have to lock those lobby doors.
Before we start locking things down, let's take a moment to thank a selection of our Tabletop Bellhop Patreon patrons.
Thank you, Ron F.
Mr. Swick, thank you, Joe.
Brian Van Beek, thank you, Brian.
Thank you, William Fisher.
Andrew Dacey, thank you, Andrew.
Danielle and Owen Thomas, missed you tonight, but thank you very much all the same. Now, your first stop to finding us should be at tabletopbellhop.com, but you can find us all over the web as Tabletop Bellhop, one word, and on your podcatcher of choice as the Tabletop Bellhop Gaming Podcast.
Now, we announced earlier tonight that we are taking a bit of a break. We are taking a month off, but you know what that'll give you time for? To send us some new questions. We would love to hear some new questions from you, our fans. Any type of gaming or game night question, whatever you want to ask, we'll see if we can answer it. You can send it online through email and here on the podcast. Send your questions to questions@tabletopbellhop.com. Click on Ask the Bellhop on our webpage, or hit me up on social media where I can be found pretty much everywhere, but not Meta, as Tabletop Bellhop, one word.
And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. And please share our show with other gamers that you think might enjoy it.
That's all for us tonight.
For the Tabletop Bellhop Gaming Podcast, I'm Sean.
I'm Deanna.
And I'm Mo.
Thank you.
And
game on.